Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We will be discussing today Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 5, Narada's instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam to Srila Vyasadeva, text 35 and following. Yat atrakayate karma bhagavat paritoshanam jnanam yatat adinam hi bhaktiyoham samam vitam. Translation. Whatever work is done here in this life for the satisfaction of the mission of the Lord is called Bhakti Yoga, or transcendental loving service to the Lord. And what is called knowledge becomes a concomitant factor. Purport. The general and popular notion is that by discharging fruitive work in terms of directions of the scriptures, one becomes perfectly able to acquire transcendental knowledge for spiritual realization. Bhakti Yoga is considered by some to be another form of karma. But factually, Bhakti Yoga is above karma and jnana. Bhakti Yoga is independent of karma and jnana. On the other hand, jnana and karma are dependent on Bhakti Yoga. This Kriya Yoga or Karma Yoga as recommended by Sri Narada to Vyasa is especially recommended because the principle is to satisfy the Lord. The Lord does not want his sons, the living beings, to suffer the threefold miseries of life. He desires that all of them come to him and live with him, but going back to Godhead means that one must purify himself from material infections. When work is performed, therefore, to satisfy the Lord, the performer becomes wholly purified from material affection. This purification means attainment of spiritual knowledge. Therefore, knowledge is dependent on karma or work done on behalf of the Lord. Other knowledge, being devoid of Bhakti Yoga or satisfaction of the Lord, cannot lead one back to the kingdom of God, which means that it cannot even offer salvation, as already explained in connection with the stanza Naishkarmyam apyasudabhavavarchitam. The conclusion is that the devotee engaged in unalloyed service of the Lord, specifically in hearing and chanting of his transcendental glories, comes simultaneously spiritually enlightened by the divine grace as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. We'll read the verse again. Verse 35. Yadatra kriyate karma bhagavat paritoshanam jnanam yattat adinam hi bhakti yogam samampitam. Whatever work is done here in this life for the satisfaction of the mission of the Lord is called Bhakti Yoga, or transcendental loving service to the Lord, and is called knowledge. And what is called knowledge becomes a concomitant factor. Om Jnana Timandasyan Chinansuna Shnakat Sakshur Mritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachai Dedazotarani. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachai Dedazotarani. Datta. So, Srila Narada Muni is explaining to Srila Vyasadeva is the story of his previous life. That and he told them all that the Bhaktivedantas were very kind to him. That they instructed them in confidential subject matters. And by that confidential knowledge, he could understand the influence of Krishna's energies. That and by that transcendental knowledge, one can return back to Godhead. So the best remedial measure, Narada Muni said, is just this transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord. That will end all troubles and misery and material life together. So we must use Krishna's energies in his service. Otherwise, these energies, if not used in his service, they will cause trouble. But if we use them, then it's like a thing which causes trouble. If we apply it therapeutically, that we can cure a disease by which this disease was caused originally. So now, in this verse, Narada Muni points directly to Bhagavad Dharma, a work done for the satisfaction of the Lord. That, of course, this is the essence also of Bhagavad Gita, Jachnarta Karmanoyatra Lokyam Karmabandha, Tadartam Karmakanteya Mukta Sangha Samachara. All sacrifice, all activities has to be done as a sacrifice for Vishnu. And because otherwise these activities will cause material bondage. But if they are done for the satisfaction of Krishna, then one will remain free from bondage. But in the second part of this verse today, it is said, knowledge becomes a concomitant factor. So real knowledge is born from devotional service, devotional activities. That's Tesham Satayuknam Vacharam Pitipavakam Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yena Mam Payantite. When we serve Krishna with a little love, Krishna gives us Dadami Buddhi Yogam, realized knowledge, transcendental knowledge, by which one can go back to Godhead. So that's the source of this realized knowledge. So knowledge not connected with devotional service is material knowledge. And that keeps one in this world. So knowledge is dependent on bhakti. Bhakti is not dependent on knowledge. That Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Payochita Yanyat Asavarihyam Yansayat Ahaitukam. Therefore, if we perform devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. So this transcendental knowledge causes detachment. And that is, we heard before, already in the second chapter of this canto, but that's what Srila Prabhupada here explains. Bhakti Yoga is independent from jnana and karma. So, if we perform karma, we perform karma without attachment to the results. That is the beginning. That's nishkam karma, without attachment to the results. Karmane vatakar simaflesh kadachana. not easy to do that because we have so many desires in our heart. But such selfless activities will help to purify our heart. If our heart becomes purer and purer, then Krishna starts to give in the heart a glimpse how to progress towards devotional service. It culminates finally in devotional service. And then you perform devotional service, and then you get this Jnanam Sayat Ahaitukam, this causeless knowledge that gives us this detachment of the world. But the knowledge, this is explained in the 5th chapter also of the Bhagavad Gita. There Krishna says, yes, sannyas and devotional service, that's detachment and attachment to Krishna, the same. Both are the same. If we become attached to Krishna, then we become detached from this world. But we cannot become attached to Krishna because we are not ready to let go our material attachment. So work done for Krishna is done for the satisfaction of the Lord. But that is done for the satisfaction of the Lord, not for us. Good. But then there's an internal aspect to this devotional service. That a deeper aspect, which is then explained in the next verse, that 36. Read 36. Govanayata karmani bhagavat shiksaya shakut shinanti namani krishnaya cha. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers him, his names and his quality. So while performing, we must remember Krishna. There's a deep internal aspect. Not that I'm doing work and I forget him completely. That I forget completely the one who I'm working for. Because that's also instructed by Krishna to Arjuna in the 8th chapter. Tasma savesha kalashu mamanushma yutyasa ayakpita mano buddhiya mama vaishasa samsaya. If one loves the person, then it is naturally that one works for that person and thinks of that person. And how can we remember his name and qualities unless we hear? Hearing is very important. And that hearing means Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. Smaranam comes after Shravanam. So these purposes here are very powerful and very important instructions for everyone. So we will read first the beginning of this purport. That an expert devotee of the Lord can mold his life in such a way that while performing all kinds of duties, either for this or the next life, he can constantly remember the Lord's name, fame, and qualities, etc. The order of the Lord is distinctly there in Bhagavad Gita. One should work only for the Lord in all spheres of life. In every sphere of life, the Lord should be situated as the proprietor. So seeing ourselves only as the servant. This requires a revolution in the heart of people to start to act as a servant of Krishna. So We will continue with text 37. 37. This is Narada Muni giving us a recommendation. Om Namo Bhagavate Tubhyam Vasudevaya Dhimahi Pradyumnaya Nirudaya Nama Sankarsanaya Cha. Let us all chant the glories of Vasudeva along with his plenary expansions, Pradyumna, Adiruddha, and Sankarsana. So hearing, chanting, and being conscious of and working for the Supreme Lord. I'll first go over the verses and then come back. Text 38. Idimurti abhidanena mantra murtim amurtikam jayate chakya purusham sasamyak darshana punam. Thus is the actual seer who worships in the form of transcendental sound representation the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, who has no material form. So this is the way to worship the Lord through transcendental sound vibration, by speaking about him, by hearing about him. And this, as we will hear in the next chapter, is not exactly what Narada Muni is going to do. The actually seer sees, as mentioned before, that there is nothing different from the Lord. Everything is coming from him. He's everywhere. There is nothing separate from him. How can we associate with him? How can we be always with him? That's a question. How can we stop feeling alienated and disconnected? Worship him through transcendental sound, is said here. The transcendental sound vibration to his service. Yeah. So to always associate with Krishna, this is the natural condition of the soul. And this is how Narada Muni is going to live his life. Narada Muni lived in this way, associating with Krishna to sound vibration continuously. Text 39. Imam svahi nihamam brahman avidyamanushtitam adam nihyanam ashvaram svasmin bhavam sakeshava. O Brahman, thus the Supreme Lord Krishna was endowed with first the transcendental knowledge of the Lord, as inculcated in the confidential part of the Vedas, then with the spiritual opulences, and then with his intimate, loving service. So we will read the purport here from the beginning. Communion with the Lord by transmission of the transcendental sound is non-different from the Holy Spirit, Lord Sri Krishna. It is a complete, perfect method for approaching the Lord. By such pure contact with the Lord, without offense of material conceptions, numbering 10, the devotee can rise above the material plane to understand the inner meaning of the Vedic literatures. Including the Lord's existence in the transcendental realm. The Lord reveals his identity clearly The one who has unflinching faith in the spiritual master and the Lord. That so is unflinching faith in the spiritual master and the Lord. And therefore, Narada Muni concludes the chapter in text 40. Samapyabhadra Shutavishutam Vibo Samapyate Yena Vidam Babhutshitam Prakyahiduker Mur Arpitatmanam Sanklesha Nirvanamushanti Nanyata. Please therefore describe the Almighty Lord's activities which you have learned by your vast knowledge of the Vedas, for that will satisfy the hankerings of great learned men, and at the same time mitigate the miseries of the masses of common people who are always suffering from material pangs. Indeed, there is no other way to get out of miseries. We will read this important purport. Narada Muni, from practical experience, definitely asserts that the prime solution of all problems of material work is to broadcast very widely the transcendental glories of the Supreme Lord. There are 4 classes of men, and there are 4 classes of good men, and there are 4 classes of bad men. The 4 classes of good men acknowledge the authority of the Almighty Lord, and therefore such good men, when they are in difficulty, when they are in need of money, when they are advanced in knowledge, and when they are inquisitive to know more about God, intuitively take shelter of the Lord. As such, Narada advises Vyasadeva to broadcast the transcendental knowledge of God in terms of Vedic knowledge, which he had already attained. As far as the bad men are concerned, they are 4 in number. Those who are simply addicted to the mode of progressive fruitive work, and thus are subjected in accompanying miseries. Those who are simply addicted to vicious work for sense gratification and suffer the consequence. Those who are materially very much advanced in knowledge will suffer because they do not have the sense of acknowledge of the authority of the Almighty Lord, and the class of men who are known as atheists, who are therefore purposely hate the very name of God, although they are always in difficulty. Narada advised Vyasadeva to describe the glories of the Lord just to do good to all 8 classes of men, good and bad. Srimad Bhagavatam is therefore meant for any particular class of man, not meant for any particular class of man or sect. It is for the sincere soul who actually wants his own welfare and peace of mind. So in the next chapter, the conversation with Narada will continue, and he will go deeper in his own story, which is a great, demonstration of the power of Bhakti Yoga and the power of associating with pure devotees, because that has been mentioned and stressed here already by the Narada Muni. And this was in this purpose, Srila Prabhupada has quoted verses from Bhagavad Gita in the last verse, for pious people, Sato Vijabajantaman, Yejna Parabhastretes, dat achter zich naar rechter die Gyanasab Aratakshava, for pious men. And in the verse and the connected verse, where we have the 4 impious men. They are described here. But yes, for all these classes of men, the way out is to broadcast the transcendental glories of the Lord. That will solve all the problems of material life. Because Krishna consciousness is about our relationship with Krishna. And Krishna is in our heart. He's there every moment. And a pure devotee feels always Krishna in his heart. And he follows the instructions that Krishna gives through the heart. But then the point is, because what does Krishna wants us to do? That's always a question that we must have at every moment. What I'm going to do is Krishna wants me to do that. So Krishna consciousness means that the desire of Krishna is dominating my own desire. So that's a concern of a Krishna conscious person. How do I please Krishna? And that was the first verse, 35, where Narada Muni is pointing to this Bhagavad Dharma. It's work done for the satisfaction of the Lord. But how do we know what Krishna wants us to do? So Praladananda Maharaj in America, he asked Srila Prabhupada, how do I know what Krishna wants me to do? And Srila Prabhupada looked upon him with compassion and said, you will do the wrong thing. That's quite interesting. If we are not pure in heart and we act on our own ideas, which is called whimsically, then yes, we do the wrong thing. But Krishna consciousness means, Srila Prabhupada said, following the dictations of the super soul within. And how do we know what Krishna wants us to say, well, to do? It is said in Bhagavad Gita, I think in one of the last verses of the Gita, Srila Prabhupada writes, when we follow the instructions in this book, instructions from Krishna to Arjuna, and he follows these instructions under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, he will get the same results as Arjuna. So Krishna tells us what to do in Bhagavad Gita, and he tells us here through Narada Muni what to do. And the first point is said in the class of today. Yeah, we should do everything for the satisfaction of the Lord, of the mission of the Lord. So trying to please the Lord. But how can we do that? Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tatparat nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhakti uttama. Pure devotional service means that one must give up all designations, not acting on the basis of the duality experienced by the body. I like this, I don't like that. No, that will not please Krishna. Rishikena Rishikesha, we should satisfy the transcendental senses of the controller of the sense, ultimate controller of the senses, which is Krishna. So that is the transcendental method to connect with Krishna and do the right thing. And what is the result? He explains here. In the result is that one gets causeless knowledge and attachment. And only this causeless knowledge and attachment will lead us back to the supreme abode, to the spiritual world. So that is the principle, but how to apply it? How to apply it? Narada Muni said, yes, you always remember Krishna, you chant his names, and you glorify his qualities, you speak about Krishna. But to remember, Srila Prabhupada explains, one must first hear. Hear is the most important activity for devotees. That if you can hear, you hear nicely, you can speak nicely about Krishna. You can remember Krishna nicely. So we remember, and in all our activities, we give the result for Krishna. We remember him while we're doing our duties. Mostly due to absorption in these dualities, we forget Krishna, and everything becomes troublesome. If you are absorbing all the problems of this world, of family life and so on, and due to your attachment and that absorption, you forget Krishna. And there you go, comes a bad day. But if you remember Krishna and take guidance of Krishna in everything, then the day it becomes more easy. Because then you work under the protection of Krishna. Working under the protection. Working under protection means you are like the boss and you are protected by the boss. You work under his protection and he will maintain you. So we work under the protection of Krishna. That was the point when Bhishma Dev instructed Yudhishthira Maharaj, when Bhishma Dev was lying on the bed of arrows. Then he said to Yudhishthira Maharaj that as long as you follow the principles of religion and principles of religion, what is the principles of religion? That this is following the laws of God. And this, what we hear now, are the directions of God. That as long as you follow these principles of religion and you please the Brahmins or the devotees, you will be always protected by these principles. That's interesting. As long as we do the right thing, we will be protected by Krishna, by this right thing. So that is in the purpose. Srila Prabhupada speaks about that devotees should give 50% of their income in charity, spent for this purpose of preaching Krishna consciousness. And there's so much advice in this important purport, but Srila Prabhupada finally writes, we simply have to accept them in total, abide by the orders of the Lord. That so that's the sensibility we have to create. I'm going to do something, and you think it's my go much, please leave that. Is Prabhupada, please leave that. Does Krishna wants me to do that? Where is that in the scriptures? Cultivate a sense of Shastra sections into the scriptures, and you will be protected. But to see to the scriptures, you must know the scriptures. You must know all these principles. If you cannot do it, that therefore the conclusion of Narada Muni is, let us chant the glories of Vasudeva along with his expansion Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Sankarshan. That they are four important expansions of Krishna. And that so yes, worshipping Krishna, giving up our attachment to fruitive activities, and not using the Vedas to get material pleasure. That is called karma kanda. There are so much fruitive sacrifices in the Vedas, and we will hear that also in at the end of the fourth canto of the Bhagavatam. There this is vividly described how King Prajna Barishat is performing so many fruitive activities because he wants piety. He thinks, if I have enough piety, I will have material pleasures in the future without limit. But that's not possible. There is always, you make a little error, there will be always suffering in this world because you have to take birth and die and so on. And some of these karmakanda sacrifices are horrible, killing animals and so on. And so, therefore, Narada Muni advised him to give it up. And he explains the uselessness of all these activities, these so-called pious activities. That it's because you have to take birth again. You are bound. We have 4 kinds of anarthas. That's the first anartha is reactions from sinful activities. And the second anartha is reactions from pious activities. Keeps you also in this world. It's also an anartha. Then you have seva apparat, and you have nam apparat. These are 4 obstacles, anarthas. That so giving up this fruitive work and engaging devotional service, then factually we will realize surely that Krishna and Krishna's names are non-different. That and that is also described in the Bhakti Samrita Sindhu. Yeah, this is, I think, yeah. Atasi Krishna Namadi Nabhavat Kayam Indra Sifma Jivato Swami Expat. That so Krishna's name, form, qualities, and passions are absolute, on absolute platform. But we cannot appreciate it with our material senses. But if we use the tongue only for 2 things, chanting the holy name and tasting prasad, jolly the tongue will become purified, and the senses will become purified. And we will come to understand who Krishna is. Due to the attachment and this absorption in this duality of this world, and we have this fruitive mentality. And this fruitive mentality is sinful, whether pious or impious. Why? Because it's based on I'm the enjoyer, and this is for my enjoyment. But everything belongs to Krishna and is for his enjoyment. So it is intrinsic sinful because it's not related to Krishna. And if we chant the holy name, we have still this mentality in our heart, which is in concreto there by all this, the presence of all these anarthas, which are desires to enjoy separate from Krishna. Then Krishna is not pleased with us. Our jhana will not please him because the jhana must be there to please him. The jhana of the chanting of the holy name. And therefore, we cannot get over these offenses. So it is because the Lord is explained there, the Lord as a transcendental form. A transcendental form of bliss and knowledge. And that can only be experienced with our original senses. So therefore, we must chant under the direction of a spiritual master and come into the right mood as a servant of Krishna. Shivera Svrupahoy Nitya Krishna Das. And then Krishna will reveal this form. So Prabhupada explains here this impersonalist. These impersonalists, they think spiritual life is opposite of material. So here everything has form, so spiritual must be same, but must be no form. But that's the wrong conclusion, Prabhupada. No, it's not opposite. And that. Of course, some qualities are opposite. Sat and asat. And sat, asat, eternal or temporary. That knowledge and ignorance, that bliss, suffering. So on the material platform, we experience the opposite what we are expecting. But it does not mean that everything, because that experience is opposite, the spiritual life is completely without activities. No, it is that the spiritual life is very blissful activities. We must just dovetail our activities in Krishna consciousness, and we become blissful. As to the extent that our heart is purified. So this Narada Muni says it is confidential knowledge that because it is an intimate loving service. Intimate means confidential. So Krishna will not Nam Prakashi Sarvasya. Krishna say, I don't reveal myself to everyone. Only his devotee. Even in Bhagavad Gita, only devotees can understand the real purpose of Bhagavad Gita. That non-devotees cannot, because non-devotee means material desire, and they project their own desires into, they project their own desires into their interpretations. And that, so to write on Bhagavad Gita, comment on spiritual matters, one must be rooted in Bhakti Yoga. Rooted in Bhakti Yoga means living in a relationship with Krishna, feeling in the heart, and always consider Krishna and his desire first. And if we have such pure contact without offense of material conceptions, without Namaparat, without committing the 10 offenses, we can rise about this material plane. Then Mamsyo Vyavicharana Bhaktiyoga Sevate Sarvatam Samatichatam Brahma Bhuya Kalpata. Then we rise above the material platform. So therefore, this chapter is concluded with Narada Muni advising Srila Vyasadeva, please describe the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, because then the material hankerings of people who hear that will go, and it will mitigate all miseries on the material platform. That is the real solution. That you should therefore compile this Bhagavatam. That in chapter 6, which we will start next time, there Narada Muni will present the story of his previous life. Very beautiful. How he became this famous Narada Muni. He got back his eternal spiritual body. And after that, in chapter 7, he will ask Srila Vyasadeva, now you meditate on the absolute with devotion and write Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is the story of the writing, the real story, real history of the writing of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, any comments, questions? Hare Krishna, Purnachandra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Yeah, sorry, I got disconnected. I just went to drop my son to school.
Yeah, we just finished, and I was asking if there are any questions.
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah. So, yeah, I have one question, if it is okay, Maharaj.
Yeah.
But first is thank you for the point you mentioned about in the anarthas. So anarthas because of our sinful activities, and also you mentioned anarthas because of our pious activities, which is so true. Because pious activities also can be a hurdle. And then Nama Aparadh is what you mentioned, the third point. So Maharaj, is my understanding correct that Nama Aparadh is basically those 10 offenses to holy name, or is it beyond that?
Well, this is a good point. Namaparat is displeasing Krishna because the purpose is we chant the holy name to please the Lord. But it is displeasing Krishna. Therefore, he does not reveal himself. Therefore, he does not purify the heart when he feels displeased. And why? Because when we are disrespecting the holy name, if we think it's an imagination, that or we give some mundane interpretation, or we think we do sinful activities and then we chant, everything will be okay. Or we give the holy name to people who are against Krishna, who have no faith in the holy name. Krishna does not like that. Or we disrespect the spiritual master, do not follow his instructions. Krishna will not reveal himself. You can chant holy name, but that's the wrong mood. Or we disrespect devotees, sadhuninda. Sadhuninda, Guru Avakya. And then, yes, also, we don't know who Krishna is. We think he's equal to the demigods or whatever. That's also an offense. So these are all forms of disrespect, and Krishna is displeased by that. And then we are not entering the stage of Namabhas. Namabhas is the beginning of the purification of the heart. Namabhas, Haridas Thakur says, is so potent that it brings one to the point of liberation. When you are liberated and you chant the holy name, then it becomes the pure name. So yes, therefore, Guru Maharaj asks us to repeat every morning these 10 offenses and to remember them, to memorize them. So important. Because Nama Parat is the most heavy apparat. That it are not the sinful activities or the pious activities. Nama Parat is a real blockage. Because when you overcome Nama Parat, these reactions from pious and impious activities will soon go. That will be automatically follow. But we have to overcome this exploitive mentality and this ignorance. That therefore it's so important. Does that clarify for Chanaka?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you very much. So Maharaj, and that is very good point you mentioned about pleasing Krishna. So basically, then it goes beyond those 10 offenses. So we have to be careful in our dealings also with Vaishnavas, because that will also displease Krishna if we don't deal with them properly.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
So,
true.
yes, and regarding Namabhas, Maharaj, so if you can just little bit elaborate, like when we will reach to Namabhas.
Okay. Usually, this is described in Madhurya Kadambini. The process explained there based on the verse of Rupa Goswami, that starting with Shraddha, Sadhusanga, Bhajana Kriya. Bhajana Kriya is the execution of devotional service, but Bhajana Kriya has two levels, Anishtita and Nishtita. Anishtita is unstudied devotional service. First, you must become steady in chanting your rounds in your sadhana, and then you come to Nishtita. This, I used to give seminars on that, but on each stage I have 2 lessons, so not so easy to explain in a few minutes. But Nishtita Bhakti is important because when you become steady in devotional service, that's the beginning. But that is not going to bring you yet to Namabhas. But if you are studying devotional service and you work on the and you work on under the guidance of a spiritual master and get his mercy, by his mercy, surely our heart will become purified. This Namabhas is a large thing. You have lower forms of Namabhas and higher forms. In the lower forms, we heard about Ajamil, who was chanting, calling his name, the name of his son Narayan. That he was calling his son. So he's chanting the holy name of the Lord, but without asking something in return, without motives. And therefore, it was on the lower platform of Namabhas, but that protected him. His sinful reactions were eradicated already. That's most of them. But mostly, we cannot even chant in that mood, this lower mood. Because we have expectations, so many desires in our heart. And we protect, our mood is projected to this. But if we continuously chant, and by the mercy of pure devotees, that's the point. If we please the pure devotees, if we please Guru Maharaj, if we please Srila Prabhupada, then Krishna will give his mercy, and surely we will become purified. Usually, this stage of anartha nivritti, which is namabhas, takes 30, 40, 50 years. That's not unusual. But when we come through that, you come to the liberated platform, and you will not take birth again. That's a long period, purification of the heart. And the gross purification goes quite quick. We give up gross sense gratification quickly. But the subtle things are lingering. That for desire for profit and distinction and so on, that we have expectations in our relationships. But all these expectations are never working out. And become frustrated again and again. But it's Krishna telling us, give up this mood. Don't be attached to it to get these things back. Let it go. That. And it takes some while. But gradually we become purified. And it is our only way. Because it's like a vicious circle, this namabhas. Yeah. We cannot chant purely because we have these anarthas, these desires, which is disrespect against Krishna. And therefore we cannot chant purely. And we don't make progress. But it's a vicious circle. How to get out of it? Only one way, the mercy of the pure devotee. Therefore, if we have a good sadhana, and we do our best to surrender and please Srila Prabhupada's mission, we get out. It may go slow, but it's not so slow factually. We are millions and millions of years, millions and millions of births, and now we have this human form. And now in 30, 40 years, you can purify yourself. And Krishna says, even if it doesn't happen in this life, nothing is lost. What's already purified, next life you start from that. So it's the best investment. That Guru Maharaj always said, Krishna consciousness is the best investment.
Yes.
Does that clarify?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Thank you, Maharaj. And then, Maharaj, when we are chanting, like if I'm chanting with all these anarthas, does that mean it is a namabhas stage or lower stage of the namabhas, or it is just before that?
It's before that.
So what is called, Maharaj?
It's if you are studying your devotional service, it's nishtita bhajana kriya, and that's good. But the progress you make is very little, very little. That it has always affected holy names. But in bhajana kriya, the effect of bhajana kriya is described by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He says we have thousands of desires in our heart. In bhajana kriya, Nisada bhajana kriya is going to remove one or two of these desires, but the most big part remains, and the big part will go away when we start to do things with the right motivation. Iya yasya redasya karmana manasakri Nikalash abhuvashtasu jiva muktya uchate. When we act spiritually means acting with our body, mind, and words only for the pleasure of Krishna, not nothing for us. And that's something we have to learn. And then Krishna will be compassionate because the pure devotee is pleased, and we will make advancement.
Yes,
So,
Maharaj. Thank you. Just for my understanding, Maharaj, so when a practitioner will be in the Namabha stage?
in the Namabha stage, you enter when you give up the 10 offenses. That's when you enter.
Okay.
That and then it starts to really purify the heart. But the key is giving up this Namaparat, which is giving up this offensive mentality, and come to the point of Trinata Pichrisnana Aman, Taro Visrisnana Aman Namanadana Kirtanya Sadari, and Nadanam Nasundarim Kavadavachya Sakamini, Chamami Chamamishvare Bhavta Bhaktya Hait Gitvai. This is the key. That's the mood you have. If you have that mood, and you enter really that mood, you come out of this Namaparat. It's good to meditate on that. That therefore, every morning we repeat these points, but these are necessary points, and we should continue to repeat them every morning. These 10 offenses and the Shikshastikam. That's the right mood.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Yes,
I
thank you very much.
just have one question, Maharaj. Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you for nice lecture. Is there any atonement for Namaparad committed in the past?
That's the only atonement is continue devotional service and try to come out of this Namaparat. But Namaparat is this Namaparat has its consequences up to Bhava. It's the most difficult. But Haridas Thakur said the only way to get out of it is constant chanting of the holy name. Constant.
Okay.
And that's interesting. But we cannot do that usually, constant chanting of the holy name. So we must also count of the mercy of the pure devotee by pleasing him in his service. That, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Good. Then
Yes.
I will take your leave. And next 2 weeks, I'm in Mayapur. That will be difficult for me to give class from there. The internet is very difficult there. But anyway, we continue after that with chapter 6. After the next Wednesday, after I'm arriving the 16th, I think the 19th is a Sunday, 20, 21, 22nd of February will be our next class with Krishna willing. Hare Krishna.
Yes. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Maharaj. And happy journey, happy and safe journey to Mayapur.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.